Hello guys, welcome to my channel HYR Tutorials. In this video, we will look into CSS Attribute Selectors. In my earlier video, we looked into CSS Simple Selectors. Those include ID Selector, Class Selector, Element Selector, and Universal Selector, right? So if you haven't watched my previous video yet, please click on this link to watch my previous video. So in this video, we are going to focus more on CSS Attribute Selectors. So what is meant by a CSS Attribute Selector? So as I mentioned earlier, if you want to find out any element in the web page, then we are going to write some pattern, right? So to find the element, we are going to write the pattern. So if you are writing that pattern using attribute names or attribute values, then we call those patterns as CSS Attribute Selectors. Okay. So it's just simple, guys. If you are writing the pattern using attributes and attribute values, then we are going to call those patterns as CSS Attribute Selectors. So how many types of CSS Attribute Selectors do we have? We have around 7 types of CSS Attribute Selectors. So here I have mentioned all of those things. Okay. So if you look at these things, here I haven't mentioned the names of these attribute selectors. Rather than I have mentioned what is exactly it is using inside that selector. Okay. So if you look at the first one, it is using attribute name. Similarly, the second one is using attribute value. And the third one is using attribute value with partial text. Like that, we have around 7 attribute selectors. Okay. So these 7 attribute value selectors will be revolving around attribute names and attribute values only, but using different functions. Like if you see here, we are using partial text. Here we are using starts with text. Here we are using ends with method, right? So it is same only, but a little bit different. Okay. So now we will look into each of these things in detail. So this first one, the attribute name. So this selector is used to find the elements with a specific attribute name. Okay. So in HTML, every web element will have some attributes and attribute values also, right? So if there is an attribute, that attribute will have some value. So that value we call it as attribute value, and that attribute is called as attribute name. So if you are using that attribute name like title, placeholder, max length, ID, class, name, so those are called attributes. So if you are using those attributes to write the pattern, then we are going to cover that in the selector 1. Okay. So in the selector 2, this one, so this is used to find the elements with a specific attribute value. So as I mentioned in the first one, so here we are using the attribute name to write the pattern, right? So in this one, we are going to use the attribute value to write the pattern. Okay. So here we are going to pass the exact value. For example, you have a title like CSS Attribute Selectors only. Okay. So in this case, you have to pass the entire value like CSS Attribute Selectors only. Exactly how it is displayed in the HTML page, the same way you need to pass to this one. Okay. And the third one is, this selector is used to find the elements with an attribute value containing a specific word. So here if you see, I have mentioned partial text, right? So that means it is contained the text. But in the partial text also we have again 2 things. One is whole word and other one is text. So whole word means, for example, if you consider this one only like title, CSS Attribute Selectors. So here you have to pass any word. So what is meant by a word? So if you split this one entire sentence using spaces, then you will get the words, right? So CSS is one word, attribute is one word, selectors is one word. So you can pass any of these words and find the element. Okay. Like CSS you can pass, or attribute you can pass, or selectors you can pass in this third selector. And when it comes to fourth selector, the same thing, but here you can pass the text. So you don't need to pass the entire word. So for example, here if you see BUTE is there, but. So you can pass this but text. That is not exactly a word, right? Attribute is a word, but in that we have this but. So you can pass TRI also. Okay. So like that you can pass a partial text itself and you can find the element. Okay. So in the fifth one, so this fifth selector, we are going to use this for finding the elements with a specific attribute starting with the specific value. Okay. So here we are using starts with method basically. So in the starts with also we have again 2 things. One is whole word and another one is text. So here in the first one, this fifth one, so here whole word means the starting text you have to pass, but that starting text should be a whole word. For example, if you consider this sentence itself, CSS Attribute Selectors, you have to pass CSS. You cannot pass C itself. Okay, you have to pass the entire word CSS to find this one. Okay, so in the sixth selector, you can pass a partial text also, like C or any partial text you can pass, but that should be starting of the text. So in this sentence, it is C, right? So if you see this one, attribute name, so in that attribute name, you can pass A, ATT, ATTRI, anything. Okay, so here starts with text and here starts with whole word. Okay, so that is the difference. And the last selector is this one, ends with method. So this selector is used to find the elements whose attribute value is exactly ending with this text. Okay, so here we are not using any whole word or something, so we have text only. Okay, so here if you see, we can pass ORS or TORS or simply yes. Okay, so you don't need to pass the entire word, you can pass the partial text also, that is ending text. So that is about these attribute selectors, guys. So now we will use these attribute selectors to find the elements in the web page. Then we use those patterns in the Selenium to find from the Selenium point of view. Okay, so let me open the web page here. So this is the application that we are going to use for practice today. Okay, so that is HVR tutorials. I'll simply mouse over on Selenium practice. I'll click on CSS Selectors practice. So this page exactly we are going to use for practice today. Okay, so here I have some text boxes, some links and some paragraphs, some buttons. So let me just open the developer tools here. So I have copied all those attribute selectors in this notepad, so we can look at each of these things in detail. Okay, and we can copy the pattern also here. So the first one here is attribute name, right? So let me just use that one. So here in this web page, if you take any HTML element, it might have some attributes. See, here it has one attribute, that is expiration. Then path is one attribute, right? So similarly, if I just inspect any of these things, like first name, so this input has one attribute, class and ID and name and placeholder, right? So like this, every web element will have some attributes. So this attribute is like this. See, the first portion, this one is attribute name and it has some value. So this is called attribute value. Okay, so now we will look at the first selector, that is using attribute name. So I have inspected this first name, right? So let me just use this. Here I have some placeholder text, right? So the placeholder is the attribute name. So let me write the pattern for that. Press Ctrl F, square bracket, placeholder, the attribute name, then close the square bracket. So after writing this one, it will find the elements and give you. Okay, but as I mentioned earlier, this will be treated as a string also. So it is giving me this result also. Okay, so this is a CSS, just ignore this and click on next. So it is giving me another input element and this input element, right? So like this you have to find. So while finding this one, if you want to specify the tag name, you can do that also. So here you can put input. So in the input elements, like in the input tags, it will try to find which element is having placeholder attribute and it will give you that list. Okay, so you can see this is the input which is having placeholder attribute, and then next one, it is also an input and having placeholder attribute. Like this, it will give you the elements. So let me just copy this. I'll just paste it here. Okay, so the next one is attribute value. So here we have seen only attribute name. So we have used only attribute name, right? So we haven't used the attribute value. So now let me just use the attribute value also. Okay, so here the placeholder is first name, right? This value is first name. So let me just press Ctrl F. So the syntax is similar, guys, but here after the attribute name, you have to give equal symbol, and in the single quotes or double quotes, you have to pass the value. So now you can see we have given equal symbol, and in the single quotes, we have passed the attribute value. So this is the syntax for using attribute value. So now you can see here 1 of 1. So it is giving me a unique element. So this is how you have to find the elements using attribute value. So when you are using attribute value, you should have attribute name also in the pattern. Okay, you cannot simply put this attribute value here. You have to mention the attribute name also. Okay, but when you are dealing with only attribute name, you don't have to mention this attribute value. You have to mention only the attribute name. Okay, so let me just copy this. I'll just paste it here. Okay, so the next one is attribute value with partial text, that too bold word. Okay, so for this, what I will do, let me just take this one, enter security question. Okay, so here in this placeholder, we have multiple words, right? So I'm going to use a partial text, that to a whole word. That means I'll pick any of this word. So here I have 4 words, right? If you split this one using space, then we will get the 4 words. So I'll use any word between one or the last one or the first one, anywhere. Okay, it doesn't matter. So when you say partial text, it doesn't matter where it is exactly. So you can pick any word and you can find this element. Okay. So let me just copy this security. So for finding an element using this partial text whole word, you have to use the other symbol. This equal symbol is to provide the entire text, that attribute value text. Okay. So here we have to use the tilde symbol. So this symbol is called tilde symbol. Okay. Before equals, you need to put the tilde symbol. So then it will try to find the elements based on the partial text whole word. Okay. So now you can see here it is giving me 2 elements, this one and this one, because in this one and in this one security word is there, right? So if I change that to question, then only one I will get. Okay, I'll just change this to question. You can see I have used the middle one and I have used the ending one, or you can use the starting one also here itself. Okay, so this is how you have to find the elements using partial text whole word. So what I will do, I'll use question here. Okay, this one I'll just copy into my notepad. Then the next one is attribute value partial text with text. So in this third one, we have used all word. That means we passed the entire word like question, right? But if you want to pass the partial text, no need to take the whole words and all. You have to pass the only partial text. Like if you see this one, you can pass in security, you have sec. You can pass that sec itself, or you can pass QUE or EST, anything, any part of the text. Okay. So let me just pass from this one itself, QUE. So for finding any element using the partial text of text, then we have to change our symbol and we have to use the star symbol here. So the star symbol will allow us to identify the elements using partial text. So let me just copy this. I'll just put it here. Okay. So the next one is starts with function. So here we have seen partial text. You can take any text between this one. In this entire value, you can take any text, any position. So the next one is starts with. So it should be starting text in that case. Okay. So in the starts with also we have 2 things, whole word and text. So first let us see whole word. So here in this one, partial text whole word means it will split the sentence based on the spaces, then it will consider each thing as a word, right? But in this starts with whole word, it will not split the sentence using space. It will split the sentence using hyphen. Okay. But here I don't have any hyphen. So let me just take the other things. So I have inspected this. So here if you see, I have one hyphen here, my hyphen test. So let me just use this one. It's a p tag and the attribute name is class. And to find that, like it starts with whole word, we have a different symbol, that is vertical bar equal. You have to mention that value. So in this my text, I'm going to use only the first one, first word, that is my. So now you can see it is highlighting the element, right? So here, if you see, we have something my space test also, but it is not identifying this one. It is saying one of one only, right? Why? Because when you are dealing with starts with whole word, it will split the entire sentence using hyphen symbol, or if it is the entire word, it will take that word also. So this is the starts with one. So let me just put it here. So the next one is starts with text. So here we used whole word, and then next we will use a text itself. So for example, any of these things you can take. So for finding with text, we have to use the caret symbol, this one. Okay. So now you can see it is highlighting all these elements, 1 of 5. See, irrespective of words, like whether it is having space or hyphen or underscore, anything, if that word is starting with this text like my, then it will find that element. So that is about starts with partial text. So let me just paste it here. And the last one is ends with. So just like this, here we use starts with, right? So here we are going to use ends with. So your attribute value should be ending with the text. For example, if you see here, we have class. So I will use, instead of class is a word, right? So I will use las. So to find any element using the ending text, we have to use the dollar symbol. Okay, like this. See, now it is giving me 2 elements which have this ending text LASS. Okay, so this is how you have to find the elements using attribute selectors. So now let me go back to the Eclipse. I'll create one class file here. I'll name it as CSS Attribute Selectors. I forgot to add the main method. So here I need the code for launching the WebDriver, right? So I'll copy it from other class. So this is the URL that I'm going to refer in this session also. So now what I will do, I will use these patterns and I will try to verify whether the element is present or not. So some of these are unique and some of these are not unique, right? So what I will do then, I'll try to print the size. Okay, so driver dot find elements. I'll try to find the elements, all the elements with that pattern. Okay, by CSS selector. So the first one is this one. Let me just pass it. Here I will say size. So if the element is not there, it will print the 0 size, right? So if the element is there, then it will find all the elements with this selector, then it will give you the size. Okay. So whatever the patterns that we have written here, all these are having some elements, like it might be a unique one or it might not be a unique one, right? So let me just write this. I'll copy this and paste it 7 times here because we have the 7 selectors. Okay. So this is just input. So the next one is input placeholder first name. Okay, so here I have listed all the things. So after the execution, I don't have to keep the browser alive. I'll just quit the browser. So now we should be getting at least 1 as a size. It should print at least 1 in the console for all these things. Okay, so let me execute this. I'll just drag this console on the bottom. So now you can see this has printed elements, right? So the first one is this one, input placeholder. Using input placeholder, we have many elements. So that is the reason it has printed 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So for all the 7 selectors, we got the results. So that means these things are working fine. Okay. So this is how we have to use the CSS attribute selectors, guys. So if you have any doubts, please let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. Bye bye. I hope you enjoyed this session. If you like this video, please hit the like button and also share it with your friends. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.